So once again, today you are going to need your DBQ document that we started with yesterday, something to write with, and at least one color highlighter. But if you have two, that's going to be better. Okay. So just as a reminder, yesterday we went through and we figured out if each question was a question that was from the text, which means that we could basically answer it by copying something directly from the text, or if it was a supporting the claim question where we were going to have to pick evidence from the text to help prove a claim was correct or incorrect. So today we're going to start answering questions from the document. So if you look at document B, all of our documents that we are using are going to help us to answer a question. And that question is, was Hammurabi's code just? So I want to ask, what did we say that just means? What's the word that we've been using for just? If you know it, go ahead, say it on three. 1, 2, 3.
Fair.
Fair, right? Now, remember, when we talk about being fair, it's not just a feeling that you get when you think that like your brother or sister got something that you did and you're like, that's not fair. That's not what we're talking about. It's not an emotional fair. When we talk about things being just for a civilization, there were three pillars or three groups that it had to be fair for. What was one of the groups that any decision or outcome had to be fair for that we talked about the other day? Do you remember one? So not Babylonia. Think about just in general, like when we talk about things being fair for a civilization. Yeah. The community or society, right? So one of them was a community or society. Yeah. The victim, the person who the thing happened to, is the outcome fair for them. And what was the third person or group? Yeah.
The person that did the thing.
The accused, the person who's suspected of doing the thing. And remember, we talked about, like in the United States, part of the way that we protect or make sure that it's fair for the accused is in the United States, you are innocent until proven guilty. So in the United States, just because somebody accuses you of something, that doesn't mean that you're automatically guilty of it. Okay? So it's very important for us to understand when we talk about fair what it means. Otherwise, you'll just make emotional decisions about this. So when we're looking to see if something is just or unjust, when we're looking to see if it's fair or unfair, you have to ask yourself, is it fair for the society? Is it fair for the victim? Is it fair for the person who's accused of it? Or some combination of those three. Okay? If you can prove that it is fair for at least two of those three, then it's just. If it's not fair for at least two of those three, it probably isn't just. Does that make sense? Yes? Maybe? No. Good. So, the question that we had to answer was Hammurabi's code just? Here's what I want you to write in that area between the document and the questions. So basically what this question is asking, was Hammurabi's code just? Here's what it's really asking. Was Hammurabi's code fair for the victim? Was it fair for the accused? And was it fair for society? So what I'd like for you to do is to write this down in this area. Was Hammurabi's code fair for the victim? Was it fair for the accused? And was it fair for society? If you're working on this at home, what you should do is pause the screen so that way you can see what it says. And you're writing down this part here. Was Hammurabi's code fair for the victim, the accused, and society? Pause and write it down now. Okay. So we should have had time in class to write down that question. And that's going to be a reminder, because as we try to answer these, we're looking for proof that shows that it was fair or unfair, that it was fair for one of those three, or two of those three groups at least. So part of a DBQ is that we're using primary or secondary sources. So we need to know what we're looking at. So if we look at this first one, our source are excerpts from the epilogue of Hammurabi's code from about 1754 BCE. Okay. I highlighted that it's excerpts and that it's from the epilogue of Hammurabi's code. From our ELA classes, who can tell me, where do you find the epilogue in a book? Yeah.
Is it the back of the book?
Yes, an epilogue is at the back of the book. Remember, prologue's at the beginning, epilogue's at the end. That's important to know, because remember, if this is the epilogue, this is the conclusion. This is the last stuff Hammurabi said. So after he has explained all these laws and all these punishments and what would happen, this is what he wants to leave people with. This is the last part that he said. So that's important, because this is what he wanted people to remember. Okay? So what I'm going to ask for you to do is you are going to read document B. After you read document B, you are going to answer from the text question. So basically question 1, 2, and 3, because these three questions, you can find the answer and pretty much copy it from the text.
Wait, are you saying D or B?
B as in boy.
Which one's document?
It should be the first one. Okay? So you're going to read document B. You're going to answer the from the text questions, which are 1, 2, and 3, and then you're going to stop. I'm going to give us 5 minutes to do that. Are there any questions on what I'm asking you to do? Okay. You may go ahead and get started on that. For people at home, what I highlighted was at the very top, I highlighted the source, which is that they are excerpts or pieces of Hammurabi's Code's epilogue. Okay? So you want to make sure you highlight that. Then what you're going to do is you are going to read the document here. And then you're going to answer questions 1, 2, and 3. Your answers for these questions should come directly from here. You can pretty much copy and paste it. So when we look at Hammurabi's Code, the first document or the first analysis question is, according to Hammurabi, what was the purpose for having written these laws? So, Gracelyn, why did he write these laws? Why did Hammurabi say he wrote these laws? Yeah, and go ahead and finish that thought. What's the second part of what he said? Right, so for number 1, there were 2 parts to it. Hammurabi said that he wrote this code that the strong may not injure the weak, and in order to protect the widows and orphans. So remember, back then, did civilizations have like orphanages for kids who didn't have parents? No. Were retirement homes a thing? No. So really back then, if you were a widow or an orphan and there was nobody to take care of you, the likelihood is that you were going to die because you didn't have the means to take care of yourself. Okay? So that's a pretty big deal, right? That the strong may not injure the weak in order to protect the widows and the orphans. So from the text, question number 2, who commanded Hammurabi to create this monument? Yeah. And who was that? Yes. So you want to make sure that you have the entire answer. Shamash, the great God and judge of heaven and earth. You say the whole thing. It's like a tribe called Quest. Okay? So if you didn't write that down, if you just put Shamash, go ahead and put the rest of that in now. And then number 3. What does Hammurabi threaten will happen to any future Babylonian king who does not follow these laws? Yeah, go ahead.
If he destroys the law which I have given, he will great gods of heaven and earth, and inflict a curse upon his family, his land, his warriors, his subject, and his church.
Yes. So you need to have all that, right? Don't just say that there's going to be a curse. We need to say what the curse is, because this is going to be important. And if you are following along, if you're doing this at home, just to make sure that you have correct answers here, this is going to be another point to pause it. So here are questions, the answers for questions 1, 2, and 3. I would say go ahead and pause it now. So you should have a chance to pause it so that way you can see it. Okay, so I want us to think about this. Hammurabi gives a lot of pretty specific people who are going to get cursed. I don't know if you noticed or not, but there's a pretty big omission. Who doesn't get cursed according to Hammurabi? Gavin, what did you think? Okay. Look at what he says. Your family, land, warriors, subjects, troops. Who's missing? Yeah. The king. So I want you to think about this. Hammurabi is basically saying, if you change this law, if you get rid of this law, everything that's important to you is going to be cursed. Your family is going to be cursed. Your land is going to be cursed. You're not going to be able to grow crops. You're going to lose in battles, and your land is going to be taken away from you. Your power is going to be stripped. You will lose your troops. Your subjects will not follow you anymore. And oh, by the way, you get to live to see all of this bad stuff happen. I don't know about you, but to me, that seems like almost worse than if you would have said, if a king decides to break these rules, that king's going to be cursed to death. Right? It seems like it'd be worse to have to live and watch everything you care about get taken away from you. Now, earlier the question was asked, did someone break this curse? And the answer is, well, yes, right? Did this stuff happen to that person? Well, no. But remember at the beginning of the year, we talked about fact, belief, and opinion. So even if some bad things did happen to kings who didn't follow Hammurabi's code, is there a way to prove that that was a curse? No, it's a belief. You can't prove that it's true, but for the people who believed it, it was true. Right? So it was a deterrent meant to keep people from trying to do that. Okay. So those first 3 questions were probably pretty easy, right? You just found the answers in the text. For questions 4 and 5, remember we have to prove for question 4 that Hammurabi's code was fair for the victims, the accused, society, at least 2 out of those 3 groups. So what I did, and this is where the 2 highlighters come in handy, the stuff that was just, I highlighted in blue. The stuff that was unjust, I highlighted in green. So go ahead, take a moment to highlight your paper with the stuff that was just and unjust from Hammurabi's code. And for you at home, we'll go ahead and this is a good pause point. So go ahead and pause your computer now so you can get this information. If we look at the stuff that's in blue, notice what Hammurabi says. He says things like the protecting king, that the strong might not injure the weak, He says things like, in order to protect widows and orphans. He says things like, King of righteousness, let the oppressed who have a case at law come and stand before my image. Right? So with all that stuff that he says, how does that show that Hammurabi's code is just or fair? So do any of those quotes help to show that it's fair for society as a whole or help society? Yeah, Gracelyn. Right. He's talking about protecting widows and orphans. Oh, let me unfreeze it. He's talking about protecting widows and orphans. Right? So here's what I wrote for number 4, and I want you to see how this works. I wrote, Hammurabi protects the weak from being taken advantage of. Right? The strong not injuring the weak, protecting widows and orphans, that's keeping people from getting taken advantage of. He allows anyone who is oppressed to have a say. Let the oppressed who have a case at the law stand before this my image. Right? So the oppressed, those would be victims. Right? Because if you're oppressed and you have a case at law, that means that you have a case against somebody. Somebody did something to you. So Hammurabi is saying, hey, we're going to protect the widows and orphans. That's good for society. If you had something happen to you, you get to have a say. So again, for number 4, I wrote, Hammurabi protects the weak from being taken advantage of. He allows anyone who is oppressed to have a say. This is fair for the victim, and it's fair for society. So in this last little bit of class, I just want to read the stuff that he said in green. And this is the stuff that kind of shows that maybe it wasn't just and that it was unjust. I set up these, my precious words, my memorial stone, image of me. Let no destruction befall my monument. Let my name be ever repeated. Understand my precious words. Let him not act under the law of the land which I have given. If this ruler does not esteem my words, if he destroys the law which I have given, may the great gods of heaven inflict a curse. So, how is this not good for society? Well, first off, what do you notice about what Hammurabi is saying and the stuff that's in green? What pops out about it? Yeah.
It's all I this, I that. But
Right. It's all I this, me that, right? Now, if it's just him talking about himself, is that bad or good for society as a whole?
that's bad.
That's bad. How can that be bad? Yeah.
He focuses on himself and not other people.
Focuses on himself and not other people, right? And especially this part about the king. If there's a new king, he's saying this king cannot change the laws. That's pretty selfish. Go ahead, put these away. Have a great day.